All right, welcome back. Um, First of three classes today. Now, most of you know this. This is the group. Micah and Eric are still taking classes, even though they're now full-time employed. And Mitch will be in one of the afternoon classes, I think. Maybe both, I don't remember. And Mike Rates will be in one of the afternoon classes. All right, but other than that, the group that's here is the group that's here. All right. So this is the DIP class, Design and Implementation Projects. If you haven't already seen it, and you probably have, hopefully you already have it. Where is it? That's your book. Unfortunately, I left my book at home this morning, which is fine, but I'm going to have to go totally from the online version. All right. And not like it's a big thing to you probably one way or the other, but when I've done this in the past and I've used the online stuff like this, I've always been using a product called CourseSmart, which was an okay product. CourseSmart got bought out by a company called VitalSource, and it's not quite as friendly to look at as it was up in CourseSmart, but I think you'll still be fine. All right. The book that we're using, as it says right here, SAMS, Teach Yourself, Angular, JS, JavaScript, and jQuery all in one. I was surprised yesterday. I'm going to say this. It's going to be taped. And honestly, when I say this, I don't say it at all to be critical, okay? But I had a 10 o'clock class yesterday, a beginning Java class. And we were starting, and then they came back from the break. And they were ripping on one of the other instructors who is not here any longer, who is an adjunct instructor. And the reason I'm bringing this up is it's the same instructor that you had for jQuery last year. Talking about what a great guy he was, but how they learned absolutely nothing. I didn't know if that was, and I'm not saying that's the case with you guys, or it's not the case with you guys. But one of the reasons I decided to go with this book is he found out on Thursday that he was teaching the jQuery class. And it started Monday. So he had a weekend to prep for it. Plus, the book I picked was really a rotten book. I mean, I'll take that, put that all on me. It was a crummy book. It was a good book if you already knew jQuery because it would allow you to do a lot of stuff. But if you didn't know jQuery, it wasn't a good book. So much of this class, the stuff that we do in here is going to be jQuery centric. All right. Now, not to put them up or on top of or below a pedestal, but two gentlemen in here, the two who sit right here, they're both in the 167 class this semester. I'm using the same book in that class that you guys have. The difference is we're going to go through this, I'm not going to say at warp speed, but faster. Okay? By the end of this week, we're going to have these 6 chapters done. All right? And you're going to get your first assignment. Okay? Next week will be lab. Then the week after that, we're going to go through the next 5 chapters, which is the second part of the book. Then you're going to get another assignment. Then we're going to go through the next, I don't know how many chapters there are next, but it's 11 to 19. And then you're going to have one more assignment. And then we're going to go over chapters 20 through 29 on Angular. And I'm probably not going to give you an assignment on that. And in my heart of hearts, what I'm hoping for is max, that'll be 12 weeks. All right. But I'm hoping it'll be 9 or 10 weeks. And out of those 9 or 10 weeks, 3 or 4 are going to be lab. So if you can't come to class, please watch the tapes. All right. Most of the stuff, not maybe 100% of it, but most of the stuff that we'll go over today in chapters 1, 2, and 3 should all be review. All right. Jumping back into the syllabus, again, the stuff that's here, that's all out of Banner. This is a capstone course, all right? But what's going to happen is let's suppose we can get all this stuff done in 9 weeks. And I'm not saying we can, but let's just suppose we can. You may or may not be aware of this. Not only did you have the longest break that Blackhawk has ever had, that's never happened before, but you're going a week longer than people went last year. Still, you're going 1 week less than you've ever gone before here. Every semester has been 17 weeks. This semester is 16 weeks. They have not done that before. There's literally a whole semester, or a whole week rather, that's gone. All right, and one of my students I was talking to yesterday said, no, look, it's 17 weeks. Here's the syllabus from the other class. It's because that teacher had numbered their spring break week. All right, which is like March 20th or something, or the 21st. All right, but if we can get it done by 9 weeks, then the other 7 weeks, you're going to be working on a project that you're going to present in here on the last, on the last day of class. All right, that'll be a Wednesday. I don't know what date that is. It's around May 18th. It's May something like that. There will be people here, both internal people from Blackhawk. The last 2 years, I've had a couple of the VPs here. My boss will be here. Probably the associate dean will be here. And in the past, I've brought in up to about 6 to 10 people from the outside. This is your chance to perform for them, literally. All right? We'll talk more on that later. So, again, you'll have an advanced knowledge of, if you don't have it already, of this stuff, but you'll have a beginning knowledge of Angular. All right? And I'm still learning Angular myself, AngularJS. All right. Again, there won't be 6 assignments, but I have to put something like that in there. One thing we have been forced to put into our syllabi this year with this attendance thing. I'm going to jump to the end of this. And when you look at this, now, even though there are people in this room that maybe their attendance has been sporadic, if you get the work done, that's a big difference between not coming and not doing any work. All right. I guess they figured out, if you haven't heard this, the enrollment is down about double what they thought it was going to be down. All right. And part of that is when unemployment goes down, there's more jobs available. When there's more jobs available, people typically don't go to school. All right. So it's like a two-edged sword type of thing. Bottom line is they thought they were going to be somewhere around 250 grand in the hole. Come fall, it's closer to $1 million. All right. So, some people, Luke came in and was telling me about this, that he heard, they're cutting at least 2 programs. They're cutting at least 6 instructors. I don't think it's me, because they said that anybody who's going to be cut, program or instructor, they already told them. Okay. But so I don't know what's going on with all that stuff. But they have to make it up some way. One of the things they figured out last year is that most instructors, this is the way it was put to us. It was put very nicely to us. But most instructors are kind of lazy in that what they'll do is if someone stops coming, they just won't do anything about it. They won't send a letter to student services. They won't do anything. They'll just, poo-poo it off. And then if it's the end of the semester and they haven't turned anything in, that person gets an F. Well, some of those people, even people that were getting Fs, what they were doing instead is, I think you get paid 2 or 3 times if you're on financial aid. These people were coming for like the first 2 and then withdrawing. And there are certain people that they've identified that have been doing it for years. And they're not going to let them do it anymore. So what we are told to do is if you miss more than 2 straight class periods, I'm supposed to send a notice to student services. They are then going to call you and say, Juan, are you okay? Is everything all right? Are you going to drop the class? That kind of thing. All right? And I mean, if you're sick, just send me an email type of thing. All right? Or if you know you're going to be gone for an extended period of time. I had a guy years ago, I was teaching up in north central Wisconsin. He left for the entire hunting season. Okay? And it was bow followed by gun, and it was like 3.5 weeks. And he never let me know. Oh, I thought I let you know. I let all the other teachers know I wasn't going to be here. Well, we're not supposed to allow that kind of stuff to happen anymore. All right. The other thing, too, that I'm supposed to share with everybody. I'm not Dave Guile. And I know what Dave's policy is, if your cell phone goes off when you're in his room, you got to write some kind of a paper on, cell phones in the classroom or something like that. No. But what we're asked to do is, ideally, you will all be muting your phone, all right? And if the phone rings and you have to answer it, that's fine. Just go outside to answer it. If you're going to be on the phone for a while, you might want to shut the door or walk down the hall or something. All right? Those are the big things. Everything else that's in here is the same stuff that I've always had in my syllabi. And again, notice advanced knowledge of these and an intro to Angular. Other than that, I think we pretty much have covered everything. All right? Any questions on the syllabus? All right. Then a couple more things, and then we'll start up. You don't have to go out here, but as always, you know, there is a, out on the P drive, there is a folder for this class. It's out here. The information that's out here, by and large, is not only out here, okay, but it's, and actually there's a spring 2016, I think. It's out here and it's on Blackboard. All right, I've tried to, as much as I could think of, I tried to take everything that I put out here and also put it on Blackboard. So when you look out here on the P drive, as far as what's here, this is old stuff. It probably won't help you at all, but I put it out there anyway. All right, but there are a bunch of articles that I found on AngularJS, on JavaScript, on jQuery, and some miscellaneous stuff. All right, and so you can see the stuff that's out there, in other words, all right? There's some PDFs. I could not find a PDF of the book. I tried. Now I'm going to ask a question. It might be fair, it might not be fair, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Out of those of you who are in the next class, how many of you have bought the books for the next class?
Android.
The Android and the iOS. All right? Because I do have PDFs of both of those.
I got it, but I can only view it on my stupid iPhone.
No, not anymore.
All
All right. So what I'll do is, as I've done in the past, is I'll put that out there and then it will mysteriously disappear. All right? The other thing I'm going to do too is for the iOS class, I'm going to have you copy over some stuff that I put on a flash drive. It's also on there. All right, so we're going to do that when we start this afternoon. All right, but there's a lot of stuff that's in here. Some of the things that are in here, some of these things are actual full books. And notice I got sent a bunch of Python stuff. A couple people have written down, and on course evals in the last couple of years, why don't we teach Python here? Well, I mean, there's 20 languages. The 20 top languages are up there on the bulletin board. There's a couple listings, and Java, JavaScript, and Swift are among the top. So the ones that were in PHP, the ones that we're teaching are the ones that are amongst the top. There's no way you might be good enough to learn 20 languages. I couldn't teach 20 languages if I wanted to. All right. But some of this stuff like jQuery Hotshot and jQuery Cookbook, those are full books. So if they help you, great. You know this because I've shown you this in the past, that if you go out to it-ebooks.info, that they're literally all the books that they show on here, you can download those. All right. And I've looked in here for the one from our author, but it's too new of a book. It's not listed. All right. And there's a bunch of sites. If you've ever done this, if you've ever typed in the name of a book and then you type free PDF afterwards, it used to be there were a lot of sites that you could go and you didn't have to sign up for anything, and you could download the PDF from there. Now most of those sites, you have to sign up for an account. And if you read the fine print, a lot of times they will charge you. All right? Whenever I see that stuff, I just get out. Well, I closed that and didn't mean to, but that's fine. The source code from your book is right here. All right, and it says source code unzipped and source code zipped. I found this is some jQuery stuff I did last semester, and I'm going to put more out there also. All right, syllabus, of course, and the course evaluation. And chapter 2 that we're going to go over today, we're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but it's on debugging. And if you're interested, these are some of the sites, and especially these two right here, come from Chrome. All right, that's Chrome's own website. This book supposes that you are going to use Chrome as your browser of choice, which I will use. It also assumes that you're going to use Eclipse for your IDE, which I'm not going to use. And it also assumes that you're going to use Node.js for your server. I'm not going to use that because we already have Xampp. So in chapter 1 of the book, which will start in about 5 minutes, when they go over how to install Node.js and use Node.js, I'm just going to skip that stuff. If you want to learn that and do it, you can. All right? That's your call. Also, just so you know, you may or may not have noticed, for the afternoon classes, John Wanda is going to be our lab assistant for the afternoon classes. For the morning class, this class, Mike Wegman's going to be the lab assistant. Mike's son is pretty sick. You may have to take him into the emergency room today, so he's not going to be here. All right? But John should be here this afternoon as far as I know. And the same kind of thing that we've always done in the past, Fridays, John will be here from 8 till 1, and Mike will be here from 12 to 5. What they've asked me to remind you is if you come in here on Friday, there is a notebook back there. And most of you do a good job of signing in, but please do sign in. A lot of whether or not they're going to allow that to continue in fall is going to be based on the sign-ins that people put in there. And that might not matter to you if you're going to graduate, but it matters to them, and it'll matter to the first-year people right now. All right. And lastly, before we start up, like I said, virtually everything that I've shown you, there's the syllabus, there's the course evaluation. I've already gone in here and done a bunch of videos for this class. I've done videos already for the first 11 chapters of the book. And in most of those, I probably took more time than what I'm going to take as we go through them right now. All right, so if you need to go back and review anything, that would be your chance to do so. All right. This is kind of the intro that we're doing right now. These are some HTML5 intro things that I've done in the past. These are some jQuery example things that I've done in the past. So that stuff is all out there if it'll help you. And if it doesn't, then don't use it. Not a problem. All right. I told you this before, as far as there are no PowerPoints for the book. I already showed you the source on the P drive, and it's here also. Anything we do in class will be put in here. Homework here. Announcements. All right. You may remember last semester, I think it was one of the days you guys were here, I was sick for a day. All right. That's my 5th sick day in 23 and a half years. So I don't get sick often. All right. There is an IT conference that's in Madison that's in March, and my boss thinks I'm going. I'm not. You asked why. They're very personal reasons. There's a bunch of people who are at that conference that, for lack of better words, pissed me off over the last 2 years, and I don't want to see them. All right? So I'm not going to go. All right? So as far as I know, unless I am sick, I'll be here all the time. When I am sick, again, I go out to announcements right here and say that I'm sick, and when I do that, and I put all that in, so when I create an announcement down here and I say sick, and I put it in here, I can display it, and then I can say send a copy of this immediately, and all of you get a copy. It's much easier for me to do that for each class, even though some of you get 3 of them then. I'd rather do that, make sure everybody gets one, than skip anybody. All right? Most of you know Stefan, who comes in here, and he graduated from here a couple years ago. He had this happen twice last semester. He comes from Elgin. He drives 78 and a half miles in each direction. And he came in here for his 8 o'clock class, and at 7 o'clock, the teacher had posted that she was sick. So he drove all the way in here so he could drive home. Okay? I don't want to do that stuff to you. So. And you may or may not know this, but they're always, for every class, I do create a discussion board. So if you ever do want to have a discussion board, you can see how big it is, but it's out there, for you guys. I can look at it, and I'm supposed to monitor it, and the only thing, is if somebody tells me, hey, did you know so-and-so is out there and there's all sorts of curse words, then I'm supposed to really start to monitor it. But other than that, I really don't. All right. So let's start. Again, part 1 of the book are the first 6 chapters. Chapter 1, which we'll go through, and it'll probably take literally like 10 minutes. An Introduction to Dynamic Web Programming. This is stuff all of you should know. Chapter 2 is on debugging. Again, we haven't never done all that much with debugging in here, but we'll talk about it and how to use debugging, how to do some debugging, especially with JavaScript and with HTML and with CSS. Chapter 3 is on dynamic web page anatomy. So it's everything that makes up an HTML5 web page. If we get just that far today, that's fine. I have no problem with that. Chapter 4 is all about CSS. All right, again, a lot of it should be review. Chapter 5, jumping into jQuery and JavaScript syntax. We'll hit more of the jQuery stuff because that's the new stuff. And Chapter 6 is on understanding and using JavaScript objects. That we should be able to finish. All right, I'm going to do the best I can that by Wednesday I'll have your first assignment written up. If for some reason I don't get it done, then it will be out there by Thursday, both on the P drive and it'll be out there under Blackboard. Everybody get that? So the plan is right now, if we can keep to the schedule, next week will be lab for the entire week. All right, and as I've always done, if it's assigned Wednesday, what I'll do is I'll make it due 2 weeks from then, but then on the Sunday. All right, and please, I don't want to go through this crap this semester where I get 50% of the work 2 days before the semester ends. It's really not fun to grade. All right, and I realize, people, well, I had this going, everybody's got stuff going on. All right, but just do the best you can that even if you turn it in a little bit late, try not to turn it in weeks and weeks and weeks late. All right? All right, so let's jump into Chapter 1 then. Again, I don't really like the way that this show is on the screen, but it is what it is. All right, so that's what it's going to look like. So if you have your book, again, I don't have the book with me, but you can see here's our objectives. I'm not going to read them to you. It's all on dynamic web programming. All right? And that's all they talk about in here. And they mention the fact that what has happened over time is people want websites that are interactive. Whatever interactive, the more interactive, the better. All right? And JavaScript, jQuery, and AngularJS are used to do that. I do want everybody to realize two things as we start. One of them you already know, and that is jQuery is just a JavaScript library. All right, that's all it is. All right, and Angular is basically a watered down version of jQuery. All right, they have made some changes to it, but Angular is set up to truly do a model view controller architecture. Don't worry about what that is right now. If you really want to know, go out to wikipedia.org and type in model view controller, and you can find out tons of stuff on it. I will tell you, though, that when I had our IT advisory committee meeting last fall, Steve Zimmerman, who's the CIO of Print Corporation, and that's where Eric's working right now, he said, do you guys do any MVC? And I said, well, we talk about it, but not much. He goes, I think it's important that you guys do some MVC. Which is one of the reasons I wanted to go with this book, because AngularJS uses MVC. All right? All right. So, understanding the web server browser paradigm. I don't want to go through this stuff. You've heard it from me several times now. You should all understand when I type something in there and hit enter, you should have an understanding of what's happening on the other side. The HTTP request, going to a web server, coming back with an HTTP response, converting it back into HTML and showing it to you in your browser. All right? That shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. So they go through this and they talk about you wouldn't have much of a web without a web server. All right? And I will tell you something. I dropped the ball last semester. And what I mean by that is when we were working on the Bootstrap class, I should have made it mandatory that everything you did in that class that you uploaded to Site 5. This semester, we're going to attempt to do that. That'll be part of what you have to do. In other words, and you may not know about this, Holly, but we have lab assistants now. We have them because of our grant. And one of the things we were able to do was purchase We're renting a server from another place where you can send your stuff out there and FTP the stuff out there and then get to it externally. So if you're out there and you're going in for a job interview, all right, and somebody says, "Can I see a sample of your work?" If they have a machine there and they have an internet connection, you'll just be able to type that in and get to it. All right. All right. You know what browsers are. They say the three most popular are Chrome, Internet Explorer, and Firefox. All right. It's not Internet Explorer anymore. It's Edge. So if it makes a comeback, that's how it's going to make its comeback. All right. Because I'd say that that's wrong. I'd say it's Chrome, Firefox, and Safari. And that's mainly because Safari is you get that ingrained on every single Mac machine. All right. I'm hoping that you have at least a minimal understanding of what the DOM is, the Document Object Model. The fact is that when you go and you create a web page, and no, it doesn't look exactly like this, but you get the idea that every one of those things that's in there, some kind of a document object model component will be created for it. All right? And you know, all of you in here know, because you've all gone through that class, that and this is why where it's different talking to you as opposed to the first year people, that I totally lost my train of thought, but you know what you're doing with this. They don't. You know that you put an ID in there, and then you can use things like get element by ID. You know that you can put a name in there and then use that name in PHP. They don't understand that thing about the name with PHP yet. All right? All right. JavaScript, jQuery, AngularJS, they're just a series of languages that, again, are event-driven. So the system is sitting there waiting for something to happen. Pressing a keyboard, clicking a button, even having the document load into memory, whatever it is. I'm also assuming that everybody in here knows what a URL is. It's HTML5. That should be nothing to anybody in here. I mean, as far as what that is, how to create that, there's nothing big in there. That's a simple web page. Okay? There's no JavaScript in it. There's no CSS in it. So then they come in the next section and they add some CSS. And they add the CSS inline. But because this is what I've been basically mandating from you for the last year plus, is I don't want you to do that. So this semester, your first assignment, you are going to create a website. And the website's going to have in it HTML, it's going to have CSS, and it's going to have JavaScript/jQuery in it. I want all of that stuff in its own file. I want the JavaScript stuff in a JS file. I want the CSS stuff in a CSS file. I want the HTML stuff in an HTML file. And that HTML file, rather than putting this in here like that, you're going to link to your CSS file, and you're going to link to your jQuery file, and you're going to link to your JavaScript file. All right? I don't care if you have multiple files, but I want you to write unobtrusive JavaScript. This is obtrusive. All right? Because you're mixing stuff together, which you really shouldn't do. I'm assuming that now everybody knows what that means. The HTTPS that's up in the upper left-hand corner of the address bar. And I'm assuming you understand the difference between HTTP and HTTPS. All right? The S means secure. And again, most people think, well, if it says secure, there's no way anybody could ever get to the information. No, it's harder for them to get to the information. If somebody wants to get to your information bad enough, they may be able to get to it no matter what you put into it or how you put it in. All right? We talked a little bit about cookies last semester. I'm not going to talk about any of this stuff right now. Another thing I'm supposing that everyone in here understands the difference between is a GET request and a POST request. That with a GET, the stuff is put into a key value pair and it's added as a query string onto the end of the URL. And for a post, it's basically put in the header. All right? Posts are for more secure information like credit card information, passwords, etc. Gets typically are for stuff that you put out there that you're not going to change. All right. Client-side scripting. Again, in the olden days, I picked it up yesterday and showed the class, but you probably have seen that. I grabbed one of those trifold folders yesterday. The things for the web software developer program, and I said that's what a lot of websites are still like. They're static in nature. They're not transient. Their stuff doesn't change. All right, that's not what people want today. If I go out to a website and I think, well, that's pretty good. There's a lot of information here. And I go out there again, maybe in the next week, and I go out there the next week. I notice it's never changing. I'm probably not going to be going out there all that often unless I have to. All right. But with the advent of JavaScript, basically, now you can do that. The other thing that JavaScript does is it allows you to do validation on the client side. We've talked about this before. All right. And one of the students asked me yesterday, because they're going to have basically the same assignment that you're going to have for the first 6 chapters. All right. And they said, okay, are we going to have a form on there? Yes. Okay, well, when you're validating a form, you can validate the form using HTML5, or you can validate it using JavaScript, or you can validate it using jQuery. Which one are we going to use? And basically I said yes, because I'm going to want you to do some of all of them. I want to make sure that you've been exposed to all of that. When you go over to the server side, well, you all know this now. You've done the PHP, you've done the .NET, and in particular the ASP.NET. We don't do Java server pages in here. It just got too much having people do 3 server-side scripting languages in one semester. Again, the advantage, as it says, the processing is done completely on the server, so the raw data is never transferred across the internet. The disadvantage is it requires more work on the server. All right. Now, that's one way that you can use server-side scripting, and those are called server-side templates. The other way is to use Ajax. You're going to do that this semester. I don't know if you ever did any Ajax in the class with Jim or not, and it really doesn't matter. The point is, you will this semester. And I've shown you this example in the past where I've shown you something like this. That if I take my mouse and I put it over here, you see that the screen is changing, but not the entire screen. And the screen is not being rewritten. All right, just the stuff that has to is changing. And then when I mouse out again, so when I mouse over, something's coming in. When I mouse out, it's leaving. That's being done with Ajax. And Ajax is an acronym for asynchronous JavaScript and XML. Most people will tell you that's not really true anymore, that Ajax just means Ajax. And the reason for that is that XML is not used as often anymore as is JSON, which is JavaScript object notation. We're going to talk about that as we go on. All right. And when you look, data.html. All right. Well, in the example they have here, and I'm not saying it's a simple example. I don't mean to say that this is, but what this is doing is it's calling a JSON. All right. It's calling a JSON method. What that does, and I'm not going to arrow back to it, but if you remember when we first looked at this file with all this stuff in it, before we put in any kind of CSS, it was just a bullet list of those planets. If you run this one, I don't think there's any CSS in here either. It looks exactly like the first one did. All right, but this one requires the use of a server. That's the big thing with Ajax. It requires a server because what you're doing is a partial page refresh in Ajax, not a full page refresh. All right. Then they talk about a web development environment. Again, I said I'm going to skip this. I did try it on here to make sure it worked. So if you want to go into your virtual desktop and set up Node.js, you can do that. It's your call. It's all done from the command line, as you can see right here. XAMPP isn't really command line. But if you want to do that, you can. All right. Then they tell you how you can go in and configure Eclipse as a web development IDE. And what they do is they have you go in and in Eclipse, they have you go and add a plugin for it. You want to do that, you can. I asked John, did you try this? And he said no. But he said if a student tries it and goes through the steps and has a problem, he'd work with them to try to work through it with them. All right. Then they tell you, again, I'm using XAMPP, but if you want to create an Express web server using Node.js, you can do it following the steps that are shown right there. The last thing that they have in here, one of the reasons I picked this book, everybody learns differently. All right, I think you'd all agree with that. But in virtually every chapter that's in this book, there are examples. And in this one, maybe you've seen this kind of thing before. If you run this program, the completed one, on the screen, you've got a span tag. And the span tag, it's literally a little sentence of text that says, click me. And then they take that span tag and using CSS, they make it look like a button. All right, so you've got your HTML that creates the span tag, your CSS that makes it look like a button, and then your JavaScript that comes in, and the JavaScript is set up so whenever you mouse over the span that says click me, it goes and it calls the random number function to give you a random coordinates for your X and your Y. So it moves someplace else on the screen. All right, so that's what they're showing you here. So there's the HTML. Then they go in there and they start styling it. So there's the CSS. So instead of it just saying click me, it now looks like this, so it looks more like a button. And then they have you come in here, and this is where all the magic, so to speak, happens. So you can see for the X and Y, that's where they are randomly coming up with the coordinates. So they always show you how to do this, but then afterwards, they give you all of the code. He writes obtrusive JavaScript or obtrusive code where everything's together. All right. And to be honest with you, a lot of the stuff that I'm going to write and show you, it's done the same way. Why? Because sometimes I've got 50 or 60 files I want to show you, and it's much easier to show you 50 or 60 files than it is to show you 180. All right. Every chapter ends with a summary, a Q&A, and they've got little quizzes with the answers that are right there. So one more thing before we're taking a break, which is what we're going to do now. Before we do, I wanted you all to see this. You may or may not have any interest in what I'm about to show you, which is fine. But I strongly suggest that you go out to this site right here, which is just codeacademy.com. You don't need the HTTPS, but you can put it in. But if you go out to right here, so if you go out to that site, it's going to look like this. And they will ask you to create an account. All right, I mentioned to the class yesterday, I've had my account for about 3 years. I think I've gotten about 3 emails from them in that amount of time. The only time you do get an email from them is if you complete a course. And then you get a congratulatory email. That's it. Other than that, they don't bug me, they don't do anything. So what about this? Is this that great a site? All right, one of the students, the first year students asked me yesterday, they said, do you like this better than W3 Schools? And I said, basically, yes, because with W3 Schools, they do encourage you to use all their code, but usually their examples are so simplistic that they're not really things you're going to use. The stuff that's in here, they're not as simplistic. And if I arrow down to the bottom or work my way down to the bottom, this is what they have classes in. Make a website, interactive websites, AngularJS, JavaScript, jQuery. I'm working my way through the jQuery one right now. I'm about 70% done. I hope to finish it by this weekend. And what I'm doing is, as I go through every lesson, I'm saving it out to a Word file. So if you wanted to go run through it, you could do that. And then so all the different things you're supposed to do are in a Word file or several Word files. And I've got the answers in there also. I'm going to put them out there. Now, that's not a good way for you to learn. A good way for you to learn is for you to go through it. But it's not, the one I'm going through is not a short tutorial. You're not going to sit down and do it in a day. All right? But I've gone through that one. Next, I want to go through, I'm kind of doing it ass backwards, but then I'm going to go through their JavaScript one, and then I'm going to go through their making a website one, just to see how they are. But these are all free, to my knowledge. There's no charge for anything. I've never been solicited by them. In other words, sometimes you get emails saying to donate and all that other stuff. I've never seen that from them. And I don't know if I can even show you. No, I probably didn't save them. I was just going to show you what they send me. It's just literally, it's a paragraph long that says, congratulations, you've completed this part of the course. That's the only emails I get from them. All right? Okay, it's about 10:50. Let's come back at 5 after 11. All right, and we're going to go over chapter 2. Time permitting, we'll also go over chapter 3.